Well, hello and welcome, or welcome back. My name's Diana and this is my channel, That Girl's Quilting Threads and Things. This is a channel where I try to share with you, the viewer, tips and tricks and things that I have learned along my way in my quilting journeys. And hopefully I can pass them along to you and make your quilting journeys just a little bit easier. So today's video is a continuation in our series, Walk Around the World with Great-Grandmother Savita. It utilizes my great-grandmother's scrap fabrics in a beautiful, repeatable pattern. So if you're new and this is your first video, there is a link in the description to the playlist for the videos that have been released for this project so far. I encourage you to go ahead and check those videos out so that you'll know what kind of fabric you'll need and how to kind of basically prepare for it. In rounds 1 and 2, we have more detailed instructions on how to complete the flying geese with a 4 at a time method and how to take those flying geese and turn them into a chevron unit. So let's go ahead, head over to the sewing station and get round 3 started. All right, so round 3, you're going to need to have the following fabric cut. So you're going to need 8 4.5-inch squares for your fabric C. You're going to need 4 4.5-inch squares for your fabric D. Then you're going to make flying geese in the following combination. You're going to make 4 flying geese using I and background fabric N. You'll make 4 more flying geese using background fabric O and accent fabric I. Then we're going to go ahead and make 8 flying geese using background fabric O for your sky. So you'll need 8 2 7/8-inch squares cut, and you'll need 2 5.25-inch squares from accent fabric J, and you'll need 8 2 7/8-inch squares cut from accent fabric J, and you'll need 2 5.25-inch squares cut from your background fabric. So you'll be making 8 flying geese in these 2 color combinations. All right, J and O, J and N, 4 flying geese using O and I, 4 flying geese using I and N. So I'll quickly go over how we do 4 at a time flying geese method. So I'm going to take my I accent fabric, then I'm going to take my 4 sky pieces, and I'm going to draw a line right down the center, diagonal, corner to corner. Lay my first 2 squares right side facing down on top of my large square. Take it to the sewing machine. Make sure to sew 1/4 inch on each side of your drawn lines. Also, to help minimize any kind of misalignment, make sure to start on the corner where your sky piece is on the top. All right, this will help anchor this piece down and minimize the potential for misalignment. I'm going to go ahead and prep up all of my other flying geese combinations, and I'll see you at the sewing machine. So I went ahead and I actually marked all of my squares for the first pass of all my flying geese combinations. So I'm just going to go ahead and chain stitch these for their first pass, and 1/4 inch on each side of the line. So just take your time and make sure that you are sewing an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance and you're lining things up straight. All right, let's get these separated and take them to the cutting table. All right, so we made our first pass and we're ready to go ahead and make our first cut. So right down the middle, that's your drawn line. You can do these 2 at a time. just whatever works best for you. If you do that, just make sure that you're lining them up straight. Take your ruler and then cut. So there's the first pass. Let's go ahead and give these a press. So when you're pressing them, all I do is give it a nice quick press to set the seam, and then gently roll open your sky pieces and then press. Now when I'm rolling the iron over, I do lift off the pressure, because if I leave it down and then roll it that way, I could, with any kind of pressure on it, I could distort that fabric. And with the measurements on these flying geese, I want to really try hard to make sure that I don't do anything that could cause the flying geese to become distorted. So I'm going to go ahead and finish pressing these so we can get them prepped up for phase 2. All right, let's head back to the table and pin the last set of squares. So for this step here, you're just going to take one of each of your remaining squares and put it on the corresponding subunit. Again, I like to pin. So what you're looking for here as a way of making sure that you're pinning accurately, I have my center line going from corner to corner. And where this meets here in the center, if I go to put a metric line on this, all right, I'll use this. So I have my 1/2 inch line lining right up on the line that I drew. Where this intersection is between this piece of fabric right here, so this intersect is right here, and this intersect is right here. It should land on the 1/4 inch mark. So I can see that this is not lined up. And you can also tell because I have fabric showing on this side. So I need to unpin that and reline it back up. Now, sometimes you want to pay attention, because if you have fraying going on here, you might be taking away from some of that visual reference cue. So let's do that again. Let's repin it. All right, let's recheck that. And now that looks near perfect. So the intersection between this piece of fabric here and this piece of fabric here is right on that 1/4 inch mark. And same thing with the side. There's that 1/4 inch mark, and it intersects with this piece of fabric here and this piece of fabric here. So now that is lined up just right. We'll be making a lot of flying geese for this project, so just take your time and double check your measurements. All right, so let's go ahead and finish pinning these up. All right, time to go ahead and sew. So same as we did before, sewing 1/4 inch, sewing a 1/4 inch line on the left and right side of your drawn lines. Now if you can see this, where your stitch line comes out, it should come out right where those two pieces of fabric intersect. All right, so my stitch line comes right out in that little corner notch right there. And that's that 1/4 inch landmark that I pointed out earlier. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and finish this second phase of our flying geese units. All right, we are coming up on our last one. We're ready to go ahead and make these second cuts. And again, you can do these 2 or 3 at a time, however works best for you. And I just kind of line them up, point to point, point to point, point to point, just like that. And then you can take your ruler, making sure that everything is still straight. And you can just cut them all like that. I'm going to go ahead and take all of these to the pressing station, and we'll come back and we'll put the flying geese together to make that 4.5-inch square block. So we have all of our flying geese units squared up. Now it's time to go ahead and assemble the flying geese into 4.5-inch square blocks as a chevron unit. So your chevron is always going to be consisting of your accent fabrics. And this is how you're going to put your flying geese together. So you'll take the top one and the bottom one, and you'll fold it over. Right sides together, lining them up. Go ahead and pin where you need to pin, and then sew 1/4 inch seam allowance down the side. It might be helpful if you turn it over so that you can see where these two thread lines crisscross, because you want to make sure that when you're sewing your 1/4 inch seam allowance that you don't cut off the tip. If you're sewing your 1/4 inch seam allowance and you end up on the left side of where these two seams crisscross, you'll cut your peak off. So I encourage you to sew your 1/4 inch, pause, stop, make sure that you are on the right side of the X, and then continue down. All right. And once you've gotten all of your flying geese units put into a 4.5-inch chevron unit, then we're ready to go ahead and make our rows and columns to put around the base of the quilt. All right, pardon the tail, but let me do it this way. All right, so for your top and bottom, you're gonna lay it out like this. So this is your chevron unit with your I fabric, with your I accent fabric, your focus fabric C, and then your chevron units with your J accent fabric. This is going to be top and bottom. Remember, and also remember, when you're assembling the rows, your chevrons are always going to be facing away from the center of the block. Then for your left and right sides, it's going to be the same. The center of your columns is going to be just the same. And let me just line this up so you can see the relationship here. If you're not positive exactly how it should lay out, just take and match up your layout with the diagram. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and sew these together. So once you have your rows and columns all put together, I recommend a nice firm press so that your flying geese units will press towards the focus fabric. And what this will do, this will really make it a lot easier for your seams to nest. I do also recommend that you pin. So I'm going to finish pinning here, and I'm going to attach my rows and columns, and then we'll come back for the full reveal of round 3. So by the time you're done attaching everything, your finished project should look something like this, depending on the colors and the fabrics that you chose. I do find that pinning is really helping to keep these points nice and sharp, and so far I've done pretty well with the flying geese. I haven't chopped off any points, and they're all lining up nice and straight. If you're following along with me on this quilting journey, I'd really love to see your projects and the different colors that you're choosing. The next episode in this series is going to be round 4, and we're going to follow the same base process. So I hope you'll continue to join me on this journey. Thank you so much for choosing to watch this video. If you have any tips or tricks that you'd like to share, please go ahead and put them in the comments below. If you find this video helpful, please go ahead and smash that like button and share with other quilting friends. So until the next video, may all of your quilting journeys be joyful, one stitch at a time. Wow, this is really horrible. You're gonna make a row of Mimi, no. Give me another shot. Why you always be in my chair? That's my chair.